Good day. My name is Armando Rendon. I'm editor of Somos, escrito magazine and head of Somos, escrito Literary Foundation Press. And today we have with us Armando Arias, Jr., who is the author of Theorizing Cesar Chavez, New Ways of Knowing Sin. Armando is gracing us with his presence today, and we thank you for making yourself available, Armando. You just put out a book. We just put out a book with you, and we want to talk to you about it and have a few questions. First of all, let me tell people a little bit about you. You're a professor and founding faculty member in the Division of Social and Behavioral Sciences and Global Studies at California State University, Monterey Bay. You write as Sonny Boy Arias, who claims to have been born in a crossfire hurricane that hits Baja California Norte once every 1,000 years. His DNA has been traced to the west side of National City, that's San Diego, California. Now live in the Central Valley and around Salinas, right?
Yep.
So we have some questions of you. The book talks about Cesar Chavez, and we're interested to find out, how did you get the idea for the book? Tell us about it a little bit and how you got the idea for it.
Well, I have to tell you that I never really know when ideas are going to strike me, but they do strike me. You know, the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein used to talk about how ideas would strike him, and he'd have white sheet flashes. He would have a moment where he just couldn't. He had so many ideas all at once. He became spellbound.
Mm.
So we were on a plane, and it was for several hours. My wife and I were on a plane for several hours, and there was a young lady sitting next to her, and she was painting with her fingers on a digital pad. So it wasn't real paint, it was digital. And she would make these beautiful drawings, and then she'd erase them in 5-10 minutes, right? And I'm just thinking, boy, this is beautiful work. At one point, I was going in and out of sleep, and she drew, it looked like a male figure, but it wasn't clear. It looked kind of like when you look up into the clouds and you see figures. And I was going half asleep, and I looked over there, and I thought I saw Cesar Chavez in what she was painting. She wasn't painting Cesar Chavez, but that's what I thought I saw. So I jumped up and I reached over. I said, wait, wait, wait. I scared the young girl. She was a 9th grader. And I kind of startled her, and I said, save this, save this. I said, I don't know why. And at that point, I wasn't really sure. I was thinking Cesar Chavez, but I knew it was something important. And I just became very emotional, and I couldn't think about anything else except that this is something I wanted her to save. And that's when it all started.
Mm.
So I'm not a social historian. You know, I know people who've written. Mariam Powell wrote the latest book on Cesar Chavez, very detailed. I knew Ricardo Griswold del Castillo at San Diego State University. And I was there one day when Cesar told Ricardo, he said, your book is so detailed, you know me better than I know myself. But I didn't do any research for this. This is all firsthand information and a little exaggeration.
Well, it's a combination. From my reading it, it's a combination of sort of fiction, fantasy, science, hard science. You talk about architectural enterprise and other pretty heavy subjects, and yet you mix them in with a vision, right, that you had of Cesar Chavez as a PhD in science. Can you tell us about that? How did you come up with that idea?
Again, you know, C. Wright Mills, the sociologist, used to talk about the sociological imagination. And he said, in developing an imagination as a social scientist, you've got to become multi-perspectival. I don't even know if that's a word, but it doesn't matter. It sounds pretty good. Mm-hmm. Multi-perspectival, that you can see a phenomena from a multiple of perspectives. And then also you've got to become multi-dimensional. So you've got to be able to say, feel what's going on in the experience at the same time, right? So I think that, you know, moving along with the idea of a sociological imagination, I'm always open for ideas to happen, but I never know when they're going to happen.
And yet, in another part of the book, you talk about meeting Herbert Marcuse, who talks about the one-dimensional man. I mean, that's the name of his book.
Right, right.
So how do you?
So you know, so you take all the knowledge, all the stock of knowledge that you have in your head. You take the experiences that you have. You take stories, and what I really took were several decades of times when I sat with Cesar, marched with Cesar, talked to him privately and in public, and all of that sort of came together, and I call it transformational moments. So there were several times when I met Cesar, and he was very charismatic in his own way. And one of the things, you know, that Max Weber, the social scientist who he studied charisma, he said, one of the great things about charismatic characters, and I liken this to Cesar Chavez, is that he was an empathic listener. An empathic listener. Now, Carl Rogers, the great psychologist of our time, one of my mentors, used to talk a lot about being an empathic listener, and that's what Cesar was. He was an empathic listener.
Excuse me, I have to throw in a personal note here because I met Cesar Chavez probably 1965 or so in Sacramento. I was working as a reporter, and I went to this meeting I'd heard about to cover the story. And I met the man. I became one of his followers, so to speak, and he literally changed my life. So talking about transformation, I kind of know exactly what you're talking about.
So what's interesting about Cesar, unlike other people in the world, he wasn't a megalomaniac. He wasn't all about ego, you know. Mm-hmm. But when he walked into a room, he had a presence, but he didn't set out to have a presence, right? Another characteristic of charismatic characters, you know. Mm-hmm. So no matter how small a thing that he would recommend or say, I listened. And there were several times when he would say just a little something, and I would take action on it. And it would forever change my life. And I have a string of these. And I have examples for each of the STEM fields in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics of when Cesar gave a little idea. He rolled out a little perla, right? Little pearl. And I took it and I ran with it, unbeknownst to him, until I announced it to him.
And you talk about Cesar having a superlative logic, which, you know, gets back again to my question about how you brought him into this situation, because he didn't live long enough to go into a doctoral program and become a PhD in science. But you pictured him as that because of his logic, the way he brought ideas together. He took some facts and he saw something else happening and he put them together and something else came out of it. So how does all this relate to the STEM studies?
Well, at several levels, several perspectives, and several dimensions. Let me give you a real classic example. Let me ground what we're talking about here. My wife and I were having some of the best paella in the world at El Che Juan, an Argentinian little greasy spoon in Calexico, just a few feet from the railroad track. And we looked out the window and a group of people were gathered. And then we noticed UFW flags, you know, and Cesar used to come through, he used to come to town. And we heard it was Cesar. So we ran across the street, and he wasn't giving a speech. He was simply having a meeting over the microwave system that the United Farm Workers had set up. So the United Farm Workers had set up a microwave system, giant towers with giant microwave dishes every 100 miles from Calexico all the way to Seattle. And they were having a meeting over the system. And we got there just as Cesar was ending the meeting. Now, again, this was not a speech. This was a meeting setting. He turns away from the microphone. He just turns away, and it's the end of the meeting, and he says off the cuff, almost looking at me, because I was coming into the room, and he's getting off this little desk area there, and he says, if only we could run the microwave signal across the border to Mexico. Okay, that's all he said. And I didn't talk to him about it. And I became spellbound. I thought, yeah. I said, what if we could run that signal across the border? It was a microwave, right? So we used to have, from San Diego State University, we used to have a campus in Calexico. We used to run a microonda, right, a microwave from San Diego to Calexico. And that wasn't part of the UFW system, but it was the same kind of hardware. This was just right before the internet. But yet Cesar had convinced the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Administration to give him millions and millions of dollars to create this structure. These giant towers, you know, I mean, it was massive towers. And you could have live television. And that's what the UFW did. But when Cesar said, if only we could run it across the border, I began thinking, yeah, what if we ran it across the border, right? So, and I was thinking educationally. I went and I talked to the engineers at the Instituto Tecnológico de Mexicali, and they said, all you got to do is twist that hardware dish in our direction. So I went back, talked to people in the UFW, and they said, well, this is federally funded. Let's talk to the feds. The feds said, no, this is strictly for the UFW. And so I thought, okay, fine. So I got word to Cesar. I said, I heard what you said. Can you send somebody, give us a copy of the proposal? Next thing you know, I got a copy of the proposal. I rewrote it, and I created a system back and forth across the U.S.-Mexico border with the universities in Mexicali, Tijuana, and Ensenada, and then universities in San Diego, Calexico, and then we expanded it to 20 universities. And we began doing things bilingually, biculturally, binationally over the system. So, you know, so in one chapter I say, well, so did I take that idea that Cesar had and I run with it? You're damn right I did. And did I go see the same people that Cesar did in Washington, D.C.? You're damn right I did. And then we get millions and millions of dollars to set up a system that we call BestNet, and the Binational English and Spanish Telecommunications Network. And we ran it for 14 years. And we picked up the internet. As soon as the internet became available, we added the internet to our system, and we were doing online courses long before most people even thought about it. And again, had Cesar not just said, if only we could run the idea across the border. You see what I'm saying? An idea that's so simple, but I would have never thought of it. Interesting. Interesting. That's what I call a transformative moment.
Right. And science is like that. I mean, the scientists, the ideas come from somewhere, and it sounds like Cesar had that kind of sensibility to bring two different things together. And fortunately, there was one person there that was actually listening.
And what's interesting about that, again, I'm not a social historian, right? I really am not. When I look back at the work that has been about all the studies and research about Cesar, I can't find one inference. I can't find one note where anybody talks about the interactive, televised fixed system that the United Farm Workers set up. It was a very impressive grant and a very impressive infrastructure from Calexico to Seattle. And I can't, you know, we need to write a book about how all of that came together.
Right.
You know.
Well, Armando, thank you very much for your time right now. We would like to have more of these sessions with you. Right now, I'd like to close for the moment. Thank Scott for helping us out. And we look forward to meeting with you again on this webinar system that is now exists. And spread the word. We obviously hope that people will go out and buy your book. It'll help everybody around the table here. But I think it'll be very informative to the general public.
Well, let me just close by saying this. You know, for me, one thing is a book, but for me, the book is actually part of a bigger project. You know, it's a part of a bigger project because, quite frankly, I was thinking, and I'm still thinking about putting a statue of Cesar Chavez in Central Park in New York City. I'm with a consulting firm that has put up a statue in Central Park, but it took 9 years. Right? I don't think I'm going to have trouble raising the money or getting somebody to make the statue. That's not the issue. The issue is the process, the people process all along the way, and trying to keep Cesar's spirit alive. You know,
Right.
I already found the spot at the Engineers Gate in Central Park. I want to put him on wheels so that every year on his birthday we roll him out and we have a special ceremony for him. But the other thing is that I'm very interested in how algorithms work with computers to actually emulate how it is that human beings think. So I've been talking to people at IBM Watson right up the street here in San Francisco. Watson's the smartest computer in the world, right? And what I'd really like to do is to create the ability for us to go and sit with Cesar in a virtual reality. But it wouldn't be a robot. It wouldn't be a hologram. It wouldn't be automated responses. You know, when you talk to a robot knows what to respond to. Like you say hello, it says hello, right? Those are automated responses. I want to build in something that's more lifelike, something that has more thinking ability to it. Now, that's very difficult to do, extremely difficult to do,
Right.
but we can start. We can start. But here's the key. I want to build in Cesar's values and beliefs into the phenomena so that we could go into virtual reality and sit with him. And where would we sit? Well, you could sit anywhere, but I want to invite you to the Federal Historic Monument now, down here in downtown Old Salinas, where at one point Cesar was imprisoned. And that's where Ethel Kennedy came to see him and so on, right here. Well, we just made it into a federal monument, and we're turning it into a museum. And I want that to be my contribution, you know, the ability to create a virtual reality setting where you can sit with him.
Well, let's save that for the next time we meet.
That's the next book, too, by the
next
way.
book.
That's
Thank you very much, Armando. Everybody, please look for Theorizing Cesar Chavez in your bookstores, online, and wherever you want. Again, thanks a lot. Thank you, Scott, and we'll see you again soon.